This is another interesting system that we've been lucky enough to visit in Vietnam, about 7 hours south of Hanoi in the province of Ha Tinh. And one day when we were investigating different areas of the landscape and culture, we were asked if there was anything else we'd like to visit or anything that we could be helped with as far as getting a better record of traditional systems. And I'm always interested in old suburbs because there's often very interesting little events and happy little accidents that happen in suburbs because of the microclimate of the buildings and the streets. That's why I'd like to see an old suburb, and so I could just do a check on the possibilities of different trees and different systems that might have been established. Well, this was interpreted in a form that is quite different to an old suburb that we understand in Australia or most of the developed world. When we entered the village, all the streets were extremely small, and guests and administrators of the project took us through to this little garden, and it was a complete established food forest. Taro, cocoa yam, turmeric in the understory. It's just ancient food forest, the whole thing. And everything was extremely well established. Small gardens of vegetables underneath fruit trees, large fruit trees, palms, climbing productive plants like black pepper, specific gardens with pineapples and turmeric and galangal and clumping onions, and borders with herbs, bananas, papayas, many varieties of fruit tree in the understory, emergent palms coming out of the canopy, small animals, even a small grazing cow under the canopy, deer in a compound which are used for their horns as a medicinal harvest. And the old gentleman and his wife were processing some food for their meal. They showed us around, and I casually asked, how long have they been there? How long has this system been established? And it turns out about 2 acres of ground, probably a little bit less, has been in the family for 28 generations. So it's a completely different timescale of establishment because everything has been tried and tested. The bees hives were all natural bees hives in hollow logs. All the medicinal plants, in fact every plant, every tree, just about every plant and every tree in the system had a use and a story, and if it wasn't a specific regularly used food, it was a very specific medicine or herbal tonic. And the knowledge was just encyclopedic. You could write a book just on this one small garden. The gentleman and his wife are both in their 80s, and their varieties of fruit trees are also have been there for so long, and they are some of the older varieties that have been well tried and tested. They're actually used now as reference to the modernised area where people are coming back to these more stable, more traditional, and in some ways a lot more productive per square metre, complicated layers food forest systems. And they're coming back for reference material and asking if they can share some of their genetic material, because they now realise that it's actually a much more energy efficient system, because they've put in very little work for the amount of return they get, and the return is constant, it's daily, it's continuous, it's just about every meal that they eat and all their medicine contained within that garden. For me it was an absolute shock to try and understand the timescale of establishment I was looking at. This is something that was literally off my scale. I couldn't really see the way this had been established. It had been there so long, and it was very hard to see the interactions between the system and the people, because they were literally so casual and so productive. And an absolute pleasure to visit it. It's the second time I've visited this garden, and every time we're made very welcome, and every time we learn more about how to approach design in an established form. A wonderful example of tropical food forest.
This is a view of the past and a view of the future. The only possible future we have is for sustainable suburbs for the food forest. We've had them before, we'll have to have them again.
Фильмы, книги и статьи о пермакультуре вы всегда можете найти на нашем сайте permicultura.ru. Фильм переведен при поддержке сайта видеоразвитие.ру. Если вы хотите заказать у нас перевод текстов, документов, аудио и видеозаписей, посетите нашу группу ВКонтакте.